So, if you guys do not know, Alexis Bellino spent 4 seasons of the Real Housewives of Orange County presenting herself as a devout Christian wife, a loving mother, a woman of faith, and a gentle feminine presence who was simply misunderstood by a cast of women who could not appreciate her devotion to God and to her family. She left the show in season 8, spent 11 years out of the spotlight, and then came roaring back in season 18 with what appeared to be a completely different energy. No more submissive wife, no more meek Christian lady taking orders. This version of Alexis came back on a mission, with a target, with a man to defend, and with footage that she was not afraid to use. And the audience watched the whole thing unfold and decided, we do not like this woman. Not now, and maybe not then either. So, we are going to go ahead and break it all down from the beginning to the firing, and let the receipts tell the story. Let's start where every good story starts, at the foundation. Alexis Bellino joined the Real Housewives of Orange County in season 5 as the wife of Jim Bellino, a businessman who operated a chain of indoor trampoline parks. Alexis came onto that show as a born-again Christian who was openly living by traditional biblical principles, meaning her husband was the head of the household. Her job was to be a devoted wife and mother. And her personal ambitions were secondary to the family's needs. And the audience watched that dynamic play out on screen for 4 seasons. Jim Bellino was controlling in ways that made viewers genuinely uncomfortable. He questioned her friendships. He made her check in before she spent time with other women. In one of the most memorable moments of those early seasons, he said on camera, calmly and matter-of-factly, "Wives, stay home." Not as a joke, as a statement of belief, as the operating principle of their household. And Alexis defended it. She defended him every season, without fail. Now, here is where it gets complicated, because what we know now about that marriage paints a different picture than what we were shown. The women on that cast, particularly Tamra Judge, who famously and nastily nicknamed Alexis Jesus Jugs during the season 7 reunion, spent years trying to convince the audience and each other that Alexis was complicit in her own oppression, that she was lying about the state of her marriage, and that the Christian wholesomeness was a performance. And many viewers agreed with that assessment because the control Jim exercised over Alexis was documented on camera. He monitored her career. By season 7, when Alexis wanted to pursue a television hosting opportunity, she had to present the idea to Jim like a proposal and wait for his approval. He decided whether she could take the job. He decided how much time she was allowed to spend away from home. And Alexis sat there and called it love and called it faith and called it the right way to do things. And some people watching that believed her, and some people watching that felt deep concern for her. What we learned in retrospect is that the reality behind that Christian household was messier than the performance. In June 2018, Jim Bellino filed for divorce from Alexis after 13 years of marriage. And there were several layers to the filing that the audience needed to pay attention to. First, he asked for joint legal and physical custody of their 3 children, James and twins Miles and McKenna. But he also asked for Alexis to pay him spousal support. The man who had been presented as the breadwinner of that household, who had controlled the finances and told his wife, "Wives, stay home," was now asking his former wife, who had not had a full-time income during most of their marriage, to pay him money every month. And then there was the matter of the trampoline parks, which became their own separate drama. After the divorce was announced, Tamra Judge went on Heather McDonald's podcast and said, regarding Jim, "Everything's in her name. He's going to go to jail. Yeah, he's a shady motherfucker." Shannon Beater then commented that she had heard people were left paralyzed after visiting one of the Bellinos' trampoline businesses. Jim threatened to sue both of them for defamation. The lawsuit proceeded through the courts for years. And Alexis, the woman who spent 4 seasons being the target of these same 2 women, now found herself in the strange position of having her former enemies become the people making claims against her ex-husband. She was not suing anyone. She was not making accusations. She was watching her personal life become a legal and public battlefield that she had not signed up for, at least not in that form. By all accounts, she handled the post-divorce period quietly. She rebuilt her life. She started a relationship with a man named Andy Bone, got engaged, eventually called it off, and then found her way to John Jansen. And that is where part 2 of the Alexis Bellino story begins. John Jansen was a wealthy Orange County businessman who had been in a 3.5-year relationship with Shannon Beater, a longtime RHOC cast member. Shannon snorts, and John ended their relationship in early 2022. By October 2023, just weeks after Shannon's DUI arrest, it was becoming public that John was now dating Alexis Bellino. The timing was notable. Shannon had crashed her car into a house in Newport Beach in September 2023, following what was described as a fight with John at his home. She was arrested and charged with DUI and hit and run. The charges were a significant public moment for Shannon, who had been on the show for years and was already navigating a very difficult personal period. And the man she had the argument with before the crash was now dating her co-star. When Bravo brought Alexis back for RHOC Season 18 as a friend of the Housewives, not even a full-time cast member, mind you, a friend, the central dynamic of that season was immediately clear. Alexis was there to defend John. And she was going to do it relentlessly, without filters, and without concern for how it landed with the audience or her castmates. From the very first episode, she came in hard. She accused Shannon of still being obsessed with John. She accused Shannon of using John and Alexis's names in every interview to deflect from accountability for her DUI. She accused Shannon of lying about John's character and ruining his reputation in the community. She posted on Instagram before the season even got moving, "Shannon, your obsession with John needs to end." She called Shannon's post-DUI public interviews a manipulative sympathy tour. She said publicly she would take the public beating for standing up for her man. Chilly. And then came the moment that turned the audience entirely against Alexis Bellino and generated the most significant controversy of her return to reality television. During a cast trip to Big Bear, while sitting with Tamra Judge, Jennifer Pedranti, and Katie Janela, Alexis revealed that John had security camera footage from the night of Shannon's DUI. She did not just mention it in passing, she described the footage as horrific. She said, "The videos are definitely horrific. Once I saw them, I couldn't go back to feeling the same about her." And then, she added, "She has now pushed us to the point where if she doesn't stop lying." And Tamra Judge finished that sentence for her. "He'll expose it." And then Alexis twisted the knife further by adding, "It's 10 times worse than you can actually imagine." Tea sippers, let's call that what it was. That was a threat. That was the use of private footage captured on security cameras at a man's private residence as leverage against a woman who was already in one of the most publicly humiliating periods of her life. Shannon Beater had acknowledged that she had too much to drink that night. She had taken accountability publicly for her DUI. She had lost a significant amount of audience sympathy in the process. And now her ex-boyfriend and his new fiancé were sitting at a cast trip in Big Bear describing footage of that night as something they could release at any moment if Shannon did not stop making claims about John. That is not defending your partner. That is intimidation. What made it worse, according to Shannon, was what was not shown on camera. She appeared on the Vile Files in October 2024 and said there was more that viewers did not see. She claimed she was called the C-word multiple times during that season, and that she was talked to in ways she described as mafia, gangster, her words. She said, "Who talks that way?" Shannon said she wanted to ask Alexis at the reunion, "If you sleep in the same bed with John, how many minutes go by before my name is uttered?" Shannon described the footage threat as genuinely terrifying. She said, "I don't know what's on it. He says he's not going to release it, so I'm hopeful. I don't think it would be a good look for him to release it. The whole thing is bad, and I'm so horrified about it." A woman who had just come through a DUI arrest and the public aftermath of it was now also navigating the fear that private footage from that night might be weaponized against her on national television. That is a level of cruelty that the audience recognized and responded to immediately. The other cast members recognized it too, even if they did not say it directly on camera. Jennifer Pedranti, who was present at the Big Bear conversation, said in her confessional, "Alexis, why are we even going here? What do these videos matter? Why does anybody need to see them? Does anybody take into account what this will do to Shannon, her family? In my opinion, it's wrong. Jen said it was wrong on camera while it was happening. And viewers watching at home agreed. The audience turned on Alexis so completely and so fast that it became one of the most dramatic viewer reversals in recent RHOC history. Emily Simpson called Alexis obnoxious and unreasonable on multiple occasions. Fans flooded social media demanding her removal from the show. Even Tamra Judge, who had been Alexis' closest ally that season, eventually had to start doing damage control as the backlash spread. And Alexis' response to all of this? She blamed the edit. In September 2024, she posted on Instagram claiming that what the audience was seeing was not real and not the truth, and that producers had intentionally left things out to paint her in a bad light. She wrote, "I just want to let everyone know that what you're seeing in my career is not real. It's not the truth. There has been so much left out intentionally to paint me in a bad light." She also said simultaneously that she was willing to take one for the team to help ratings. So, in the same breath, she was saying the edit was unfair. She was also acknowledging that she understood the business and was willing to be the villain if it served the show. That tells you everything you need to know about the level of self-awareness and strategic calculation happening behind those wide eyes and that Christian devotion. The blame the edit defense is one of the most tired moves in the Real Housewives playbook, and it is worth addressing directly. Every single person who has ever had a difficult season on a Bravo show has accused production of selective editing. And the audience has watched long enough to know that while editing choices do shape the story, the raw material has to be there. You cannot edit footage of someone threatening to release private videos that does not exist. You cannot manufacture a confessional where someone describes DUI footage as 10 times worse than you can imagine. That came from Alexis' mouth in a confessional on purpose, on camera. That was not a bad edit. That was Alexis Bellino making a choice, and Bravo ultimately agreed. In December 2024, Alexis confirmed on the Going Rogue podcast with Carlos King that she had not been asked back for RHOC Season 19. She said there was a hard conversation with producer Alex Baskin, described it as a relief in some ways, and acknowledged that Heather Dubrow and Tamra Judge had, in her words, put the nail in the coffin by making clear they did not want her back. Tamra, for her part, confirmed on 2TS in a pod that she had known Alexis was not returning before Alexis announced it publicly. She also said that when she visited Alexis after the season ended, Alexis asked her, "Are you my friend or my TV friend?" And Tamra said she had thrown herself under the bus and got run over defending Alexis throughout that season. The woman who was Alexis' biggest defender walked away from the friendship feeling used. Different year, different situation, same story. Here is what the full picture of Alexis Bellino actually shows when you look at it across her entire time on this show. In her first run from seasons 5 through 8, she was a woman in a deeply controlling marriage who appeared unable to advocate for herself and used Christian principles as both a comfort and a shield. In her second run in season 18, she was a woman who had been through divorce, rebuilt herself, found a man she believed in, and came back to the show to protect him. And she did it with the same unwavering commitment to one person's narrative that she had shown to Jim Bellino for years. The difference is that the person she was protecting this time was not a husband controlling her. It was a fiancé she was choosing to go to war for. And she chose tactics that the audience recognized as intimidation, weaponization of private footage, and public humiliation of a woman who was already down. The evil side of Alexis Bellino is not a cackling villain. It is something more subtle and more consistent than that. It is a woman who attaches herself completely to one person's version of reality and prosecutes that version at any cost. With Jim, that person was Jim. With John, that person was John. And anyone standing in the way of that person's narrative gets targeted with the full force of Alexis loyalty, which, as season 18 demonstrated, does not have a lot of guardrails around it. Both things can be true. Alexis came back to that show genuinely believing she was defending someone who was being wrongly maligned. And the methods she used to do it crossed lines that the audience could not forgive. She is gone from RHOC now. John Jansen's $75,000 lawsuit against Shannon Beater was still active at the time of her departure. The security camera footage has not been released. Shannon is still on the show, and Alexis Bellino is on the outside looking and claiming she was misrepresented and that the truth will one day come out. Like I always say, when multiple people who do not know each other are all describing the same experience of you, at some point you have to stop blaming the edit and look in the mirror. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.